But why? What?
I'm leaving that in. That's it.
Welcome to another episode of the Top Corner Podcast, and today is 3/10/2025. Excited to see you guys. I like this thing.
Bing.
Yes, sir. And today we're gonna talk about a lot of things, just a lot of things. The Champions League, a little bit about the Premier League, and you know what? Just football and soccer for the fans in the US and football for the rest of the world. It is what it is. And today's co-host is Julian for the unconventional people.
I prefer the Julian. I prefer Julian. Yeah.
How you doing, brother?
Fantastic, man. Fantastic. Wish that the endeavors of my club were a little more on the upside, but we take what we can get. And I would say it was a great weekend for football, but it kind of was a bland weekend for football in a lot of ways if you look at it too.
Yeah.
But we got Champions League coming up, and we should get a lot of good material from that. The Liverpool PSG game was very exciting. You can't help but think the second leg will be equally exciting. So while it wasn't, the bright shining star of football over the weekend, the midweek matchups should be pretty electric.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, before we get into it, let's talk a little bit about the greediness, or I may say, I don't know what FIFA is doing.
Right.
They want to expand from 34. Wait, now it's 43.
Yeah.
To
40. Yeah. 46.
48.
46
or 48.
I'm gonna double check what you're talking.
Yeah. To 64, I think so.
Although it's just for a one-off, they said.
Yeah, just for
we'll see how long. We'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, which is I don't get it. So the 2030, they want 64 teams.
Yeah,
and a lot of people somewhere a little bit on
48 teams. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So somewhere thinking, hey, this might be good. A lot of people were like, nah, just because of the word World Cup, it means the world. A lot of people are saying everybody should be allowed to play.
But you have to qualify.
But what good does that make if everybody plays? It's just not a circus, and you got to qualify.
Yeah.
So is 64 a lot? I think it's a lot.
That's way too many.
Because this is not going to be a month. This got to be like 2 months and a half, because then you're going to crunch in a lot of time for a lot of players.
Yep.
A lot of injuries. Oh, man, that season or that year,
yeah,
you wouldn't make it as a player.
You almost want to start taking bets of how many of the big clubs in Europe, how many of their starting 11 will not be starting the season. They'll have at least, maybe nothing serious, maybe strains or whatever, but like when that season starts in like late August, early September, like how many of those starting 11 guys might be coming in mid-October?
Yeah.
Just to make sure that they're healthy. And we've dealt with in this Champions League endeavor an expansion.
Yeah.
There was an expansion. There were a few more teams. The league phase changed it a little bit to where you only really had 2 more matchups in that group stage / league stage. And of those 2 extra matchups, essentially what they built it out to be was you get 1 extra big matchup.
Yeah.
Because some of those groups didn't always have the best matchups in mind.
Yeah.
So they did expand the teams. You do play 2 extra games in the league phase, and then an extra playoff leg if you don't qualify for the top 8. So while they did that, they did what the World Cup is doing. It's less overall.
Yeah.
Like the expansion was not quite as bludgeoning as 48 and 64 teams. And they're not going to get rid of the group stage from what I imagine. So it's just adding many more games. They're adding many more games into this process and not being as considerate. Not that UEFA is considerate to the players. They don't give a shit either. No one does. But it seems like a much more aggressive and needless expansion than the UEFA Champions League update was.
Yeah, if this is what we're going to do at this point, we're just going to let everybody play now, because 64, that's a lot. And that's also not considering the health and wellness of these individual players during that year. That's also a lot more time for competition. And I'm not saying it's bad how many teams are in the world? There's a lot more countries, but you got to make it to a point where it's really competitive, because each person qualify per continent. So India continent, they got to make it to get in the league,
and then
to play with the big boys.
You think that it helps the less star-studded teams, what it really does is it gives those players a reason to not play.
Yeah.
If you're going into the World Cup and you need that summer off, let's say that you're like Brahim Diaz, because Brahim Diaz is Moroccan, I think, or
Yeah, Brahim
Algerian.
Algerian. Algerian, yeah.
Not a big nation for national football. You know, you're lucky to have one or two big players in there. He needs that summer off. He's not going to strain himself for more, you know, in those bigger games like that.
Yeah.
So unless you're Brazilian, Argentinian, and then in Europe, you know, you're France, Germany, Belgium.
Let me correct it. Brahim Diaz is from Morocco.
Morocco? Okay.
Yeah, Morocco.
But you get what I'm saying though, like he needs that summer off. He doesn't want to waste more games in a side that's going to quickly bounce out, but still play more games in that scrappy group stage. Real Madrid need him. So unless you're in a French, English, German team where like in a bigger bench as well.
Yeah.
You know. So
and at the same time, how I mean, if you get to 64 and you got, like, if you take a continent like Australia, for example, or Oceania, they really don't have to qualify. Means because there are not a lot of teams in there.
Right.
So how many teams are you giving them? That means a lot more countries, or you will get more. Yeah. And already a lot of people are complaining that you will get a lot more, which is fair and unfair at the same time, because to match the amount of countries that Europe has, or the other continent that can match it will be Africa, but then you get them less. So
I was gonna say it's kind of like the coefficient for like qualifying for the champ. Like it's like, Europe get more slots because their output is stronger. Like they need more room because it's more evenly distributed in terms of talent. You're going to have more European nations that are more qualified than the AFC. You know, like of course that's what's gonna happen. Just like the Premier League gets more slots than the Belarusian league. Yeah. Because the second place in Belarus is still much less in quality than mid-table in Serie A or Bundesliga. So it does even out. And while it might not feel fair on paper, or like, but it is per capita.
So how are you gonna distribute that? Well, for me, I think unless because there's 200 countries currently in the FIFA, or members of the FIFA, 64 teams, which you consider other countries as not strong-minded, or just not, their football level is not that strong. I think it should still be competitive. 48 is still, because you got to create scarcity. If it's a lot more as quantity wise, it cannot devalue it. I'm not saying competition becomes tougher because there's a lot more teams to get through, but it has to be, I think, each thing at its own time. Now, I just think it's too soon. 2030, I mean, I get the point, but nah.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Arsenal is preparing to activate Nico Williams, but this is a rumor contract, a release clause. I think the release clause is somewhat of 58 million. Yeah, it's not a lot, but the certain thing is that some people were talking about that the release clause is not really a problem, but the salary. So apparently, he gets paid well.
And Athletic?
Yeah. So his agent and everyone, for that to work, they will have to pay a little bit more. And that's when, just going through, that's when I read that Athletic pays a little bit really good to their own players. So they really don't have or feel the need to leave. So so Arsenal will have to give him a lot more money. Not just a release clause. Release clause is not really the problem. So apparently that's where the problem lies.
Okay. Is that a position that they need the most, Arsenal? That's the bigger question, I think.
So depending, if you get him as a striker, you have to look at his output.
But he's not a striker though, is he? He's left winger.
That's another thing. So that's why I say if you get him for a striker position, I mean, your left wing was really there. I've been also complaining about the left wing at Arsenal.
You have, but not as much as the number 9. And I agree. Because I've heard this rumor for a while now, and like, yes, Martinelli has been out of form this whole season, and at a certain point, you kind of can't be out of form for an entire season. It's just that your talent's just like something bigger has happened than just being out of form there. Trossard looks tired, although he does show some creative spark at times. What Nico Williams offers on that left wing is much needed in that system, but you still need a center forward more. So like, I'm not displeased. And if you're even a neutral fan, you should be scratching your head saying, it's not so much that this doesn't make sense, and it's not so much that I shouldn't be hearing about this, but it should be secondary even in what they're releasing to the press in terms of what they need. Because Ollie Watkins got to walk away. You still need to and since then nobody else has really been entering that arena, even just for conversation. Because you do want those players' names out there. I think you don't want cloak and dagger signings. Even if it's a big player, like it's like you want that player to know that you care about them. And there's been nobody. If I'm a striker in one of the premier sides in Europe, whether I want to go to Arsenal or not, whether or not I think that they do need that spot, which they do, and I think everybody agrees. Who fucking knows? And like I want to feel like a priority to them. It doesn't seem like they're taking that role seriously.
So if I'm Arsenal right now, I'm looking at, should I get a striker first, a good one, someone that at least will be a 17 on average to 25 goals a year or per season. And it's weird because I think also in the world right now, I think there's not a lot of striker. I'm talking pure striker. If you look at it, actually, most teams have either wingers, converting goals or just scoring goals. But in terms of just pure striker, there's not a lot. So if you're Arsenal, you're looking at it, and it's like, where can I go and get it? This striker. If I'm Arsenal, I'm going to this French leagues. I'm going to, man, we've been talking about this for a long time. Osimhen, at this point, his contract won't be enough. A lot. Just go and get him.
Jonathan David?
Yeah. Go get these guys.
Go dig up Ivan Toney from Saudi Arabia. Where the fuck did he go? Drives me nuts. What a waste of talent there.
I think for Ivan Toney might be the injuries probably. Whatever. I think that's what he probably looked at and said, I could still play at a high level, but if it's just for 1 or 2 seasons, I'll go make the money.
Or maybe they allow him to bet on the games.
Hey, I didn't say it.
I did,
but maybe. So for Nico Williams too, that like what I was saying, the true headache about this case or how teams want to get him, it's not really. It's more about a salary issue. So because now apparently Athletic Bilbao paid their players, like I said, extremely well. So they were asking for 80 million. And he might also require more, so probably 200k a week. That's why a lot. Even Barcelona tried, but since Barcelona don't have no money for now, so that's the problem. So it's crazy that a team like that in La Liga. So based off this, that's when I went to look, and apparently this guy they pay a lot of their players well, which is crazy.
If you're one of the executives at Barcelona, you're kind of like leaning over your shoulder to Athletic, going, "What are you doing over there? How'd you get that number?" Like, because it's a well-run club versus a poorly-run club.
That's true.
And it's like, go take some notes, go get a man inside, pretend that you're a janitor, right, and sit down on the meetings and take notes and like steal the ideas.
That's another thing though. It means like they're very well run, which I haven't really got into the details of that. It's like one of those things. Like I forgot who I was listening to, and he said in terms of just a well-running club, meaning on average, you take in account transfers, you take in account production in terms of players and selling, in terms of the money in and out. Tottenham is the best run club in the Premier League because they don't spend that much.
And they
barely even spend actually.
Well, and they make a deceptive amount of money. If you look, like even they've run numbers in the U.S. They sell tons of merchandise here. And I think it's because a lot of soccer fans here, they understand that in this country it's an underdog sport, and therefore then they you already have an underdog mentality.
So you go
for the underdog team. I think it clicks with a lot of sensibility. I think that's why Spurs are so popular here, and I think partially that's why Arsenal's so popular here, because Arsenal have a very distinguished legacy, but it's many years behind them. So it's sort of this like withered glory kind of a thing. That's my theory behind that, because Spurs sell a ton of merchandise here. They make a ton of money, and that stadium was very expensive, but like they're still not hurting. But they just don't make a ton of massive signings. They still treat themselves like a smaller club despite the income.
They don't go crazy, and they have a really well-run academy too, which many of the players come from sometimes, and they get to resell those players at extremely large values for humongous amount of profits. And we're gonna talk about Arsenal. Arsenal United, man. What happened? What happened to Arsenal?
It's a very
We thought this was their year.
on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being most, 1 being least. How boring was that game?
Do you think that game was boring?
I thought it was boring.
I thought it was very interesting because
Well,
for the first
interesting
time,
and boring can be different. Like
Okay.
it was interesting seeing what was developing in terms of how both of these clubs were performing,
Okay.
but go ahead. Just in terms of like just the quality of play was pretty sloppy.
I think
nobody really seemed
you-
interested
now,
in getting ahead of there.
So in terms of quality, there was not a lot of quality. Cause a lot of missed passes, a lot of missed goals, mishaps, a lot of low efficiency, if not nothing to zero efficiency at all.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
in terms of just playing, to be honest, I didn't expect United to put such a performance against Arsenal just because of the state of United right now. And if it wasn't for Riot, to be honest, Arsenal would have been getting it. But again,
Yep.
that also shows how efficient from United side because they couldn't score apart
Yep.
from Bruno Fernandes. But
What a
talk
free
about-
kick too, though.
yeah, but if you think about it, United been in the state that they've been for a long time. Bruno Fernandes just kind of that guy in that team that you look at the team and you're like, they're really poor, but there's that one guy that kind of come through sometimes, if not a lot of times for them.
A lot of times, yeah, yeah. And I think the reason that you forget about it, not you, but everyone forgets
yeah.
about it, is because he doesn't always have. He very rarely has the attitude of a leader.
Yeah, that's true.
He plays like one, like he has the talent. He has the in those last moments, who's going to pull it out? It's probably him. But the day-to-day kind of interactions and stuff you see, you're like, he's not acting like what you expect the skipper of one of those sides to be. And I think that it's mostly just an indictment of where both of these clubs are at right now in the season. When these two match up, usually there's big stakes in the season. If not for both, then at least for one. Someone's in title contention for something. But here we are in, early March, and neither one of them, United especially, and I'm not even taking more digs at them, but United are lower mid-table, and though Arsenal are in second place, the title has gotten away from them. The stakes behind this game, of this massive matchup, were kind of not there from the beginning, and I thought I saw that in the energy. It felt like both sides kind of understood that this is 90 minutes of kind of no real redemption here,
so back and forth. And another thing, I feel like I think Sir Jim Ratcliffe was talking about it, and he also said, which is the same sentiment I have. I don't know for a lot of other players and for the United fan base and for other fans, the sentiment is a little different because they want a result now, just because of how United have been for this whole years. I say that to say, you can't blame the state of United. You can't blame Amorim. He just got to the team. He didn't have time to implement his tactics. Heck, I know for sure that a lot of those players can really implement his tactics. So for now, he's just doing what he can do to survive the season. And I think, and we've said this before, the proper way will be to offload a lot of these players and to restart. And I feel like he is saying it because there's a lot more young players now that is kind of picking up. As far as United is right now, I don't think they also have the money because that's why the reduction in force and all of these crazy money savings that they're doing. So the next 1 to 2 years, how do you feel like United will look like? I think it's just going to be a lot of young players from the academy.
Yeah,
I don't think they're buying.
and a lot of the players that they have brought in still need to go. I don't think that Højlund is good enough. So
does Højlund will be good enough for Arsenal? I feel like he'll be good enough for Arsenal.
I don't think that he is a big a Champions League or Europa League level striker. I don't think he is.
You think he's more of like a season striker or I don't know, FA Cup kind of striker?
No. I mean for like those sides in particular, the ones that frequent the Champions League and the UEFA or the Europa League competitions. Like if your team is placing at that level in the table in those respective leagues, I don't think that he's going to deliver you those kinds of goals.
Yeah, I see. What about Declan Rice? He hasn't been the Declan Rice that we know all this season, but
Yeah.
man, lately he's been pulling through.
Yeah.
This game, especially this match, he played his balls off.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, someone had to. And, the deceptive thing about Martin Odegaard is that, and the reason that I'm mentioning those two is because, I mean, that's by far the two midfielders that you build around in a three-man midfield here. And they have different playing styles and different expectations and different skill sets. But it seems like Rice has kind of been taking a bit more of an offensive role, or at least a chance-creating role. Not because Martin Odegaard isn't working hard, but if you look at his play recently, he's much more interested in, or at least his hands are tied to only create horizontal passing. You know what I mean? There are plenty of times where there is an open channel, and he seems to turn his back to goal and kind of back out and attempt, in his own mind, you think, to massage the defense into a different way to open things up.
Yeah.
But really what ends up happening is that the window closes and you miss that opportunity. A lot of side-to-side passing. You know what I mean? And just like his forward moving has kind of dwindled a little bit. But that said, he's still a hard worker.
Yeah.
It's not that he's lazy. It's not that he's really like inefficient in terms of passes completed. It's just that drive moving forward's not quite there. The team itself is not quite as pressing, both with and without the ball. And I think that hurts his play style. I think that he's a very quick player. Smothering, like he's the offensive chance creator when your team is capable of smothering the other one, both offensively and defensively.
I wonder if it's because they don't have quality at the attacking side.
Yeah, well, I mean, and so Winieri is great. Winieri will eventually become your number one. I think that not having, because Mikel Merino is not a center forward, nor should he even try to be, and he tried to be. I think it's what it looked like he tried to do. And yet, Trossard and Martinelli are kind of off their form a little bit. So yeah, I mean, he can't really rush forward and do everything himself. And two of the three guys up top are not quite. Or at all playing the way that they're supposed to be playing. So that takes your ability away a little bit more. But that said, Rice has been able to sort of step in and be a bit more of the strong center forward that is capable of pressing into the opponent's box and at least putting some pressure on them in that capacity.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested to see what the rest of the season look like, but unfortunately, I don't see them in the runner-up anymore unless miracles happen.
Yeah,
because there's still a lot of games, but that will be preying on Liverpool downfall a little bit.
It is it is Liverpool dropping in form in a way that's statistically highly improbable, and then Arsenal continuing in perfect form. In the same exact time, both of those things aligning for as long as it needs to for the points to level out. I'm not seeing it. Even if they do win it at Anfield, it's not gonna that's not gonna mean that much.
Does anyone remember the time where City used to be just another club? A time where you expect the City to be around, Swansea City, kind of mid-table,
nice,
but apparently they rose up to the ranks and we became. The City became this glory team, but now it looks more like they came back to the original self.
Yeah, they're looking more like Crystal Palace.
But how challenging is that for Pep Guardiola though? Because especially the reason why I bring this argument is because a lot of people in the world feel like he's the best coach, but a lot of people also feel like we can't really say he's the best coach because he hasn't really coached an underdog team.
Yep,
most of the time it's coaching a really well
for a short amount of time too. Like with City, true. It's by far the amount of time that he spent at one club.
So it's more like you really never saw him in difficult situations with teams with not extreme talent. Well, I would say I wouldn't say they are not talented, but not the caliber of talent that he always has had. So it will be interesting to see him pull this over.
Yeah, I don't see it taking too much away from him because at the end of the day, you still have to balance the squads. You still
Yeah.
have to train with the squads. You still have to implement your tactics. You still have to go win the games.
Yeah.
Outside of Madrid, and because we've had that conversation before of like Galacticos, where essentially everybody is so free thinking and so individualistic that you kind of can just field the team and say, go out and be fucking superstars, boys, and they can.
Yeah.
Even other sides that are competing, in a very measured and competitive way with Real Madrid, it doesn't quite work that way. You still have to be a bit more team driven.
Yeah.
So there still is a lot of work to do despite the depth of the squad, and he did build quite a bit of that squad over a long period of time. But yes, with Bayern, with Barcelona, he was stepping into very ready-made projects and not staying long enough to really have to do a one-for-one rebuild of the entire squad. And that's where he's at Manchester City. He really excels when he is able to implement his style of play and tweak the machine that's around. I don't need, if I've got a starting 11, that's crisp with a couple of room for improvement, and then my bench and reserves, maybe I need 4 players in 3 seasons that really kick this thing into high gear. That's what he's really good at. But needing 5 or 6 players each offseason to continue rotating because guys are aging or these guys are not clicking immediately into your system, it does show that he is just as human as everybody else at times.
But does that mean that the tactic is so focused on adamant to implement, which we always know, possession ball? Sometimes you gotta have the players for that. What do you do if you don't have the players, or maybe the players you have are not really suited for that, and you have to come with a new play?
And we've seen that several times over the years, and it's just what's happened is that they've had so much depth, and he's had so many other great signings that they kind of overshadow that. I think that the perfect examples, and they both are on the left wing, which is a good thing for me in this circumstance. Raheem Sterling, when he played for Liverpool, he showed extreme pace, poor decision making, and really holding up and delaying play in the box. He was not an overly creative player. He did not excel at being given the ball and letting flourishes kind of happen. So he fit really well into a system where it was like, no, you do this. You run here quickly. You do this now. I'm telling you now. I'm redirecting your timing. It's not up to your intuition. Now you're under my control, and he excelled at that. Whereas Jack Grealish was the sort of free thinker of the attacking portion of Aston Villa, and he excelled in that ability of, well, let me just get the ball in the box and we'll figure out what happens. And then once you strip that away from him and say, now you're going to go do this. You run here, you do this. He doesn't quite work into the system. So, Pep does have a track record at times of, getting the most out of. When I say little, I don't want to say that Raheem Sterling's not a good player, but getting more out of somebody and then squandering from other people at the cost of the system, the capital S system. So he's not been perfect in that system either.
Well, when you look at Haaland too, it looks like, and you look at this preview game, Nottingham Forest against City, Haaland he was kind of starved. And I wonder if also the whole, because Pep Guardiola's system, in every system he's had, there's always that one guy in the system that could make this breakthrough passes, splitting the defense, and they don't have that guy in this at this time. KDB, especially for City in this time.
They have him, but they don't have him in the same form that he needed. And they did not make great strides to replace him, and that's partly what we've said as well. The young players are supposed to come in and learn from those guys. Some of those haven't clicked, and that's an issue. But now all of your guys that were together and did click, now they're out of form because they're aging out of it. So now not only can the young players not replace them, but those guys can't perform at the same level anymore.
But what if you don't find a guy
that doubles
like
your problem.
What if you don't find a guy like that? Do you change the system a little bit?
Well, you have to. But see, the thing is, I think they could have found a replacement for KDB if they were looking for it. They made it, at least it looked like it to everyone else. They made no attempts really to attempt to replace KDB or Silva, and in the next few years, Rodri. So like once you have that player, it's like, that's great. You sign him for a long-term deal. I mean, De Bruyne has been there for a long time. Did you just think he was going to stay there forever?
That's true.
Was he going to have robot legs put on? Like, what was going to happen? Like, you needed to get somebody ready for him, and all you really did was replace your fullbacks and your wingers, and they're not as good as the guys that you needed to replace. You never adequately replaced Mahrez, but you've tried 3 different ways with Doku, Savinho, and Nunez, and now they're playing all over the place, not knowing what the fuck's going on. Like, you never really attempted to rebuild the engine in the middle, because you thought they were inexpendable, they're individuals, they're world-class talents. Like, yeah, but you're going to have to replace them. So, like, you might not get KDB again, but you've got to get the closest thing to him in his play style, because your system does succeed if they can play that part. But now none of these guys know how to do that.
We're gonna get into the Champions League this week, and we are going. I think this week is the second leg, right?
Yes, sir.
And that decides who goes to the next stage,
to the quarters.
Yes, and already I can tell you, Aston Villa is gonna go. But how incredible is Aston Villa to be in that stage? You know, Dortmund Lille. You called it. It was gonna be a hard game. I thought Dortmund was gonna have this.
I think they'll pull. I think Lille will pull it out. Yeah.
Madrid Atletico. Oh man, that was a good game.
It was a good game.
Yeah. I enjoyed the game, and you know. My guy Vinicius came too. No, Rodrigo came too. You know, that's kind of what I like about teams that are not heavily systematic teams, because at least they have what I call the winning breaking point, is where any player at any moment of time, when the game becomes difficult, someone can take over.
Yeah.
But when the team plays so systematic, they kind of lose their identity when they can't play the system. Arsenal was great, 7-1.
Yeah, that was pretty unexpected.
That's normal. Not unexpected in 7, but not unexpected in winning.
Agreed with that. Yeah, it was a very fortunate draw out of the playoff round to get them. And I mean, although to be fair, I mean, you know, Juventus didn't play well. I mean, they were beaten by Eindhoven, and so even if Juventus is not good enough to beat Eindhoven right now, for some reason you'd still rather face Eindhoven. Just in case something happens. And so now there's a real opportunity for Madrid and Arsenal to meet in the quarterfinals. That's what it's looking like is going to happen.
Yeah. Hey, man.
That'll be interesting.
I'll be interested to bring you guys to the slaughterhouse.
For the people that are listening to the podcast that might not know that, those are our respective clubs of fandom, so we'll see what happens there. I still think that there's a legitimate opportunity, though, for an El Clasico in the final.
That's what everybody is kind of hoping, but I feel like the more people are playing into this, the FIFA might be prone to manipulate this thing to get to the Clasico.
to make sure that it happens.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
It plays into the world is now waiting for it. Now you the FIFA, you're looking at it like, that's cash.
We got to do that.
That's a lot of money.
Well, not only that, but like especially here recently, that's been an El Clasico. These two sides put together. It's one of the few Barcelona sides, like they have Madrid's number here.
Hey, I actually, this is the first time I'm scared.
Especially in a one-off final, not 2 legs, not over the course of an entire table.
We haven't beaten them this year, and they have beaten us with crazy amount of numbers. So
even though they're still, you know, they've been this entire league phase and this entire playoff stage. Barcelona have been probably in the top 3 or 4 projected winners, but they still feel like an underdog. It's usually, you know, so far it's been Madrid, Munich, although they, like, people say that begrudgingly, of like, you got to kind of put them in there. Barcelona as an underdog, and then Inter as the dark horse.
Yeah,
those have been the 4 so far, with some people trickling in saying, you know, before the round of 16 draw put them on that side of the table, that Arsenal had an potential to get to the final, at least, because they were in the most in form, and in the league phase they were one of the most in form, but they are not now, so you can't quite expect anything past the quarterfinal for them. But Barcelona, it's a perfect story. The underdog right now, despite having the Giants number all season. You think that UEFA is going to do something to manipulate that to happen.
That's what I'm saying, because everywhere I was reading, a lot of people were like, what if this is Clasico on the Champions League final? And you know, these guys, they usually make crazy amount of euros just in their league games. So imagine that. We're counting at least, I'm thinking at least 2 billion views across the world.
It would pull in a lot of
Live.
people that don't
I'm not-
normally
yeah.
watch. Yeah.
That would be crazy. That's what I'm saying. If a lot of people play I feel like FIFA might be more prone to manipulate this thing.
It would be so popular that they would get brand new fans, like not even casual fans,
Yeah.
and they'd be seeing Barcelona going, "Where's Messi?" like you know that would happen too. You just want to go, "Oh, honey, wow, that's bad."
But Benfica Barcelona though, you watch the game. I watched a little bit, and the one thing that struck me was Benfica kind of knows how to play with the high line.
I was gonna say, well, in Barcelona, like they institute the high line, but they're not always the best at executing it.
Yeah,
either.
Benfica broke it so many times. They were just not successful. Efficiency wise. But
if you're Lille, let's say that Lille makes it past, Lille past Dortmund, Lille have pace.
to
And
break
so you should, in theory, while you're training for that game, if it's Lille and Barcelona, the individual man-to-man talent, there's a disparity between the two. There always will be. That's just the way that it goes. But, I mean, if you just put it on paper, we have extremely fast forwards. They run an incredibly high line, and they're not Liverpool of 2019 that are masters at creating the offside trap. They're exposed quite a bit, so get in behind them, and it is possible to put goals past them. Whether or not you can remedy their front line, which is also extremely capable of scoring goals, that would be just a shootout, I think.
You know what?
I could see like a 7-5 over
Shootout.
2 legs deal. I could, really.
You know what's crazy about these teams like Benfica, Lille now, Ajax of 2019 is when they come and they get to this level, the one thing that really separates them from the great, and which is one thing that separates everyone from people like Madrid and the rest in this competition, like Barcelona, or, Bayern Munich, is really the mentality. Because you get to this point, you look at Benfica and Lille, you're like, on paper, of course, they're the underdog. Yep. But when they play, man, if
they're there for a reason, they earned it.
Yeah. If Madrid doesn't look at it and say, "Hey, wait a minute, we gotta win," then they will beat Madrid.
Oh yeah.
Because they have pace, they're young, they have energy, they can run this all day.
Yeah, this round of 16 was really interesting in terms, and even the playoff round, if you look at it, there was no real side within those bunches except maybe Celtic. That you can't not take seriously. And even then, I mean, Bayern got past them over 2 legs on a 3-2 aggregate.
Mm-hmm.
So they're capable of scoring goals. So I mean, you can't take any of these teams lightly.
Yeah.
Especially a Lille that's been able to perform so well against they beat the shit out of Sporting 3-0 as well. And then I think that yes, drawing 1-1 away from home was massive for them.
Paris Saint-Germain, Liverpool, and let me tell you something.
Man,
I think Paris Saint-Germain, that's one thing about this type of games. There's two outcomes. Usually when a teams play you that good is if they don't score, then unfortunately for them, that the opponent will score 1 goal and the game will be over. Or they will play like that and just freaking slaughter you. Paris played good. Actually, Liverpool didn't play nothing. They got lucky on
Liverpool were very poor and PSG were very good.
Too good to the point where I was looking at the game. That's why I texted you. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
But this might be the Paris we all know.
My wife and I were watching that game over dinner, and that's what I was like. She came in for the second half, and I was like, that whole first half was just a complete slaughter, just blitzing everything. And then it was more of the same in the second half.
Yeah.
And she's going, wow, that's pretty wild. And I was like, and it was like in the like late 70s, early 80s of the portion of the game. I was like, man, I just don't want something to be snuck in because and sure enough, it goes in, and I just was like, there you go. That's it. Completely against the run of play, completely against the flow of the entire match. You sneak one in, that's it.
My dad and I, when we watched this type of games back in the day, he would be like, at the 85th minute, he would be like, I know what's gonna happen, and I'm asking what the opponent is gonna score, like a really lanky kind of goal.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be the end. I'm like,
Harvey Elliott, really? And he'd been on for 3 minutes, I think.
I know,
God, Jesus.
Man, and Munich, we thought Leverkusen were gonna give them a run for their money, especially that they haven't won Bayern Leverkusen this year. But the one thing, like I said, in big high stake competition, that's what you really understand.
Yeah. I had made 2 underdog predictions in this round of 16, one of which I still hope and think will pay off. I did think that Lille was going to get past Dortmund, and I thought that maybe at least Leverkusen's electric pace could squeak them by Bayern. That one's not gonna happen. But I still have faith for my Lille side.
All right. That was the Champions League. We're gonna look at, if you watch the Champions League, you better watch this week, and we're gonna talk about
you
this
can't
next
not.
week. And I think we kind of know what's gonna go through, but the rest is up for discussion. Next week we're gonna cover some of the games again, or some of the matches for you guys, that are so focused on technicalities.
Shut up. It's a game.
Like I said, go follow us, subscribe, comment, do whatever you want, or you have to do to get this podcast. Drop a comment, turn your notification bell on. See you guys next week. I'm just doing so.
Nice. I appreciate that. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.